Hello, Internet. Welcome to episode 364 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The second Amendment podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me tonight, she is the absolute, without question, greatest hostess in the entire universe. She's impish, but I love it. Erin Paulette. How you doing, Erin?
So our listeners will be amused to know that I have created a bingo card for Weer'd Beard titled Weer'd Beardingo. Weer'd Beardingo. Doesn't flow off the tongue, but it works visually. And I'm going to attach to the show notes a link to it. And when you press the link, it'll generate a new one every time, so that as you listen to the podcast, you can play Weer'd Beardingo and, who knows? You might be able to. Okay, admittedly, you'll win nothing except bragging rights, but that's what I was doing while he was telling one of his interminable stories. So yeah, that's weird. How long has it been since we've had an episode? It feels like it's been like 2 weeks or something.
We skipped a week, and that was because I was a chaperone for my daughter's school. It turns out like this is like a big initiative. They didn't have it in Maine, but it's called Outdoor Classroom, and essentially schools. I couldn't find out like how far the range is, if it's around the entire country, but I know that they're talking about like kids are coming, like they're saying like I think this week that we're recording right now, there are kids from New York City up at the camp that I was at in New Hampshire. But essentially, it's a fresh air initiative sort of thing. Kids go out there. They're staying in cabins with bunk beds and all that stuff. And they're getting up and they're doing physical activities and learning nature-y stuff and sing-alongs and all the stuff that you would get normally for summer camp, except it's fall and it's during the school year. And so, my wife is very, very amused at the fact that of the family, I am the one that had the most fun. My daughter thought it was fine, but she was not. It didn't knock her socks off. She was pleased to not be at school doing regular classroom work. But overall, she was very happy to be home. But the other guy that was there were two of us in our bunkhouse with 20 teenage boys, or really preteen boys, and it was what it always came down to all right, well, one of us should stay out here near the sports fields just to make sure that nobody gets in trouble out here, and one of us should go back to the cabin because there's a bunch of kids going back there to make sure there's no trouble there. Which way do you want to go? And I'd be like, hey, you choose whatever you want. my partner would always go, yeah, I'm the indoor kid, you're the outdoor kid. I'll be going inside. Oh, but it was fun. And actually they had a dogfish dissection. They dissected a spiny dogfish as one of the classes, and I sat in on that, hoping that there would be some question that would completely stump the camp counselor, who was like all of like 25 years old, and and the marine biologist could swoop in and answer, and I let her know like she nailed it. Like it was really, really good. Like she did a great job, and there was nothing more I could add. And well, I could have added sea stories, but that would have completely hijacked the classroom, and it would have been rude. But yeah, that was last week, and why we didn't have a show.
I mean, did anyone get hurt and require like first aid?
Not in my group. One girl sat on a wasp nest, and but she only got 4 stings, which is impressive.
Yeah.
I stepped on one once when I was about that age and got 15, and that sucked.
Ooh. I mean, I just figured, what with your training and your job, that you would be one of the people better suited to doing first aid on the students.
I mean, there was sniffles, some minor cuts, that sort of stuff, but nothing of warrant.
Mm. So you weren't able to say one of your favorite lines.
Oh, no, I absolutely said that several times.
And what was that?
I'm practically a doctor.
Thank you.
Aaron's going for the coverall. So how was your week, Aaron?
Well, okay, if we're going to do, I want to say 2 weeks, there have been some very interesting water-related developments. I think I mentioned the last time we recorded that we had gotten notice that they were going to turn off the water and they were going to flush the pipes and upgrade them and do things like that. And so we were filling up all the different containers, and I'm getting my prepper on, and I'm thinking, we've got plenty of water here. Actually, I thought we had more than we needed, and, that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, we won't go through all of this. And we went through all of it. I don't quite remember how many days it was. I know that the water was actually out for not a full day, and so we could use it for certain things, but they told us that it wasn't safe for drinking because they needed to test it for bacteria. And so you could use it for showering as long as it didn't get in your face and things like that. And then they said that it needed to pass 2 consecutive days of the bacteria tests. And I thought that day that they did it would be the first day, but it wasn't. So yeah, it was 3 days before we were able to drink the water, and we used up all the ones we had saved, and we started having boil things. And it wasn't a big deal, but it was more like a point of pride. I really thought we had enough, and we didn't. Mm-hmm. And then this past Sunday, and it's Tuesday that we're recording this, we had mom was going to church, and she noticed that there was a water leak in the garage, and it turned out that the hot water heater, which it's a 2014 model. I know those things only last about 10 years, and this one had gone for 11, and it had started leaking. And it wasn't like it was spurting water, but it was flowing pretty steadily. I mean, if you were on a submarine, this would be concerning, the amount of water it was putting out. And it did get some boxes wet. And so I had to take the boxes out and put them in the driveway in order to dry off. And at some point between the taking the boxes out and then bringing them back into the garage, once they had dried off, I had somehow messed up my shoulder, and it was hurting really badly, which is why we were recording on a Tuesday instead of on a Monday. And we only today got the new hot water heater installed. And so I haven't had a hot shower or been able to shampoo my hair for 2 days, and it sucks, and I'm ready to do that. I mean, I was able to keep clean. What I did, again, I got to get my prepper on. We still had the cold water, and so I would fill up a sink, and then I would drop my immersion heater in it. And I don't mean the little curly Q one that you put in a mug, because that works, but it's small. I've actually got a much bigger one, and it's impressive. And I mean, I didn't choose it for this, but it is kind of suggestively shaped. But yeah, you can drop it into a tub, and it heats the water up really quickly. Because I mean, the one for the cup just has the 2 prongs, but this one has the grounding plug. You know, it's industrial yellow, and I put it in there, and it heated up the sink water pretty quickly, and so that was one of the reasons I got the immersion heater. And so then I was able to give myself a washcloth, not even really a bath, just a rinse. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's been the exciting developments over the past week. Just, prepping and water stuff.
Well, I will say that I can't speak to it directly, but But if you are without water and you are worried about the cleanliness of your hair, there is the entire world of dry shampoo.
That's a good point. For some reason, I had forgotten that existed.
Yep. No, we learned about that when my wife had brain surgery and she couldn't take a shower, but oh boy, was her hair a mess. And the dry shampoo did wonders. The dry shampoo and 2 entire containers of detangler.
I am honestly surprised they didn't have her cut her hair short for the surgery.
They actually said directly not to. Just because they actually it's better to have your hair long because you can comb it over the part that they shaved. And so yeah, they shaved the side of her head. She kind of looked like Wes Studi from The Last of the Mohegans. And but she could essentially quickly once she had recovered enough to be able to start brushing her hair again. Her mom used dry shampoo and 2 containers of detangler to get the matted knots out, which is a couple hours worth of work, but not a Herculean task. And then she could just comb the hair over the scar until the hair grew back.
Interesting. Yeah, I've got to make a note of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, be a good thing. It's a good thing just to throw in a kit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, worst case scenario, I've got a wall electric trimmer, and I can just shave it like I'm Ellen Ripley in Alien 3.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
but that's drastic.
There are some days when Aliens is my favorite movie in the series, but there are other days when Alien 3 is my favorite in the series.
You're allowed to be wrong.
You know who directed that, right?
No.
I'll give you a hint. He also directed Fight Club.
David Fincher?
Mm-hmm. It was David Fincher's first feature-length film.
Oh, okay.
But I think enough of the esoteric factoids. Shall we dive into some news, Aaron?
I guess so. I mean, okay, so just briefly, and I'm not trying to trigger weird, my big problem with Alien 3 is that they spent the entire arc of Alien 2 creating this ersatz family with Ripley, Hicks, and Newt.
Mm-hmm.
And we were deeply invested in them. And then in Alien 3... everyone except Ripley died, and they didn't even have the decency to show it on screen. It all happened off screen, and we were told about it later. And that just felt like a betrayal. That was not good writing. That's not how you handle the departure of these beloved characters. And apparently there was some bad blood with the studio, and so the guy who played Hicks basically said, you're not going to use my name or use any of my images, and if you do, I'm going to sue you. So there was enough of bad blood there that is just like, no, I'm already prejudiced going into watching it. I didn't like it.
No, you are not wrong on that, and I will also say that without giving too much spoilers, they also did a very, very good job in Aliens at really fleshing out the life cycle of the xenomorph, and they just effed it up completely in Alien 3. So much that I would hope that the 4th Alien film would have been Ripley waking up from hypersleep and the whole thing was a bad dream.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, the whole it's definitely much more of like a gothic sci-fi. It's just in this dark, rusty prison planet with all of these, prisoners who have created their own religion and all of that. Like, it is by far of all of the Aliens movies, it's by far the most lush world building that is done in any of the series before or since. Granted, I haven't seen some of the later ones, but someone told me at camp that Alien Earth is actually pretty good, and so I may dip my toe in that water.
Let me know how it goes.
Yeah, but Prometheus burned me deep. So yeah, no, like I said, there's Aliens is by far the most correct answer of the best movie in the series, just because there's no such esoteric arguments on, oh, is this better or is this worse? What's going on? What's a better movie, The Godfather or The Godfather Part 2? Nobody says The Godfather Part 3 because it sucks. Nobody argues that that Aliens isn't better than Alien, and many people and I might be one of the few people that will argue that Alien 3 might sometimes, if you're in the right mood, be better than Aliens. But yeah, no, there was a lot of bad blood, and there was some studio hell, and I believe they were unable to get the actress who played Newt back there. There was an early script where her cryotube malfunctioned, and so therefore it allowed her to age into an adult. And that was going to be part of the story arc. But yeah, the director's cut is considerably better than the original, and has some very, very big plot changes. Unfortunately, there was also bad blood between David Fincher and the studio, so the director's cut of Alien 3 is effectively an unfinished film. Like there's subtitles in certain parts because they weren't able to loop those scenes and all that, because David Fincher had cut ties with the production studio.
Okay, I mean, I was about to say, well, maybe I'll give it a try, but then you say it's unfinished, so oh well.
If you want, after the show, I can give you the beats of the parts that are different.
I mean, I don't really remember much of the plot of Alien 3.
Don't worry, I'll finish out your bingo card. All right. I want to talk about this good news because this is exciting. It's a little dumb, but mostly exciting.
It's also not as great as it sounds at first, but it is promising.
That's exactly where it stands. Is a federal judge has ruled that the ban of carrying in a post office is unconstitutional, and that is awesome. And we've been saying this forever. Not being able to carry in a post office because it's a federal building is stupid, because there is no security in post offices. There is no reason why you should be able to have to disarm, and in many instances, it is next to impossible for people to live their lives without having to go into the post office. If you're in an area that does not have mail delivery and you need to go to your P.O. box, every day or every couple of days to check your mail. So this is good news, but as Aaron said, there is bad news, in which case the bad news is that it is one of those ones that only covers essentially the direct defendants, which is members of the Firearms Policy Coalition and Second Amendment Foundation. Thankfully for me, I'm a member of Second Amendment Foundation, but this does mean that, if you are just an NRA member or you're not a member of any of these groups, it technically does not apply to you, and therefore you could still get arrested and charged with carrying in a federal building for carrying a firearm in the post office. But I think Aaron will agree with me that this is so stupid that I imagine that it won't last long. It'll be quickly challenged and fixed so that it applies to everybody.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've already done the hard part of ruling it unconstitutional, and then it should be fairly easy to say, well, if it's unconstitutional, it shouldn't apply for everyone, not just people who are members of a club. Constitutionality should not depend upon whether or not you're a member of a club.
Mm-hmm.
And so that should be pretty quickly repealed, but these things do take time. Although I will note, and this is something that I've wondered for quite a while, I mean, post offices famous for not having metal detectors, or at least in the part of Florida where I live. Who knows, maybe in the big city they have them. But I mean, I've always wondered, how are you going to enforce this? Because as you say, there is no armed security. And so, if you're carrying concealed, who's gonna know? I'm not encouraging anyone to break the law, mind you. It's just one of those, okay, this is a law, but how does it get enforced unless you're either foolishly open carrying or you have to defend yourself, in which case, I feel like having to defend yourself in a post office would be an excellent challenge for this law. Fortunately, that hasn't happened.
Yep. No, there is that. I mean, the only other thing is the ubiquitous, and why even though I'm somebody that is not a huge fan of open carry, I am a huge fan of open carry being 50 state legal, because even if you are someone who has committed your life to always be carrying concealed, and you're going to carry yourself concealed, and you've got a great carry rig that doesn't even print, and you are just an absolute ninja, there's always the opportunity where the gun gets exposed. You reach for something a little bit wrong and something flips open. You rub up against somebody and your shirt rides up over your gun. You slip on something. Somebody spills something on the floor and you slip and take a tumble and you're ass over tea kettle on your back. And now as you're getting up, people are going to see your butt crack and they're going to see your gun. Those sort of things happen. And so that's really the big risk of carrying in a post office.
So when I saw this, and I saw that it only applied to members of FPC and SAF and a few named individuals, I honestly thought that was why the government was demanding SAF's membership list.
Yes, that's actually yep.
I'm looking at something else, and this was because the next topic here, order demanding production of SAF membership list vacated, which is great. But here at SAF.org, they're saying that it was involving the case Reese versus ATF. Which is challenging federal law which prevents licensed firearm owners from selling or transferring handguns to adults under 21.
Yep, that was exactly the reason why how I ended up getting this article in the show notes and realized, oh, this is not what I was looking for, because I remember hearing about both the DOJ demanding the membership list of Second Amendment Foundation, and I believe Firearms Policy Coalition was also named in this ruling. And essentially there was a big flap going on about the fact that, they're demanding the membership because not only are they saying that it applies to that group, but also you needed to be a member before the ruling went through. You can't, essentially what they're saying is you can't go through and join Second Amendment Foundation and then either transfer a firearm or possibly, carry in a post office. But essentially, it was very, very quick that these groups were saying that they weren't going to release their membership lists to the government, which thank you so much. But and then the DOJ has backed down. So I don't know what this would do for somebody in the interim who gets caught either carrying or is getting a handgun transferred to them under the age of 21. But again, this is it just welcomes further challenge. But also, again, the bigger news is that these organizations are doing their best to protect our identities from the government.
And this is why, well, not this specific reason, but the general reason of the government demanding membership lists is why, since inception, Pink Pistols has never kept member lists, has never collected dues, because the reasoning being is, if we don't have the paperwork, there's nothing to hand over. So there's no need to fight it legally. We can just go, we don't know. We can't produce what doesn't exist. So,
and furthermore, also just to put a fine point on it, is that Pink Pistols is an old enough organization that in its early days, it still could be legally actionable against you if it was known that you were a homosexual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Big Pistols it's old enough to drink now.
Yep. All right. Well,
Actually, it's older than that. It was founded in 2000, so it's 25 years old. It can now rent a car.
Marvelous. Though I think I'm trying to remember if that's been overturned or not as well. Well, it was never a law. It's always just been an industry policy. But speaking of reasons to drink, California. that meme with the frog in the overcoat. The gentlemen, I regret to inform you, California. So they did it. We talked about it. I believe when it was first proposed, I was hoping it wasn't going to go anywhere, but I also knew that was kind of a fool's bet to bet against California getting ridiculous gun control laws. But sadly, I was my fears were correct, and California has passed a bill banning Glocks and Glock compatible handguns. Essentially, any gun that can be fitted with an auto sear is now an illegal fire or will be come January 1st an illegal firearm in the state of California. And this is dumb as hell because, I mean, Glock is the gun brand gun. Furthermore, I don't know if how exactly the law is written, and I'm also not as much of a this is probably a job for David for a future segment. So David, you've been warned. You're on notice to talk about the internal mechanics of a Glock according to this law. If, say, it doesn't apply to M&Ps or H&Ks or FNs or other Berettas or other guns that are quite similar in the fact that they're polymer striker fired guns, but aren't specifically Glocks or Glock compatibles like the new Ruger RMX, which is effectively a Glock all around, but has zero Glock parts in it whatsoever.
So I do want to clarify something, Weer'd, because you said it made Glocks illegal, and that is not actually true. What it does is it prohibits the sale of, quote, machine gun convertible pistols. And so the article doesn't specifically say grandfather exemption, but it is in there. It's implied because, as they say, they're talking about the wrinkles and exemptions. And for reasons I don't understand, private party transfers through an FFL do remain legal. And so it means you can sell your used Glock to someone else. And so if you're allowed to sell your Glock, that means that you are allowed to keep it.
Yes.
So I'm honestly surprised that California just didn't do an outright ban.
Well,
maybe they decided, what with this being like the most popular gun in the country, that it would violate the takings clause, and they didn't want to pay people for all of their Glocks, and so they just decided to grandfather it. But it's a rare display of sanity by California in an otherwise insane law.
I will play devil's advocate or really angel's advocate in this case. In the fact that, no, I think this is very, very California, because California went through and banned high-capacity magazines, anything over 10 rounds in the state, but they were grandfathered, and then later on went back and got rid of the grandfathering clause. So it's really just the first move in a 1-2 punch. I think that... especially since, again, criminals aren't going to care. Like, this is the big gag. I think, somebody says here, it's a solution without a problem, because if you're a law-abiding gun owner and you don't have an SOT, or you don't go to fun events like Aaron and I do, where there are SOTs with their silliest guns possible. And so then, I've shot a Glock with a switch on it, and it was 100% legal. But that was actually the only time that I've ever even seen a Glock with a switch on it, just because they are exceedingly rare, because literally the only way you can get one is illegally or legally with an SOT. And even then, I believe it's not possible for you to transfer it. No, it wouldn't be. So yeah, these are exceedingly rare items and only existing in criminal hands, but that just means that there's going to be more of them coming in, and criminals don't care. They'll buy guns across state lines. They'll illegally 3D print guns. They'll do all sorts of stuff, and then they'll put switches on them and shoot each other, and that will be the grounds for, we just need to make them completely illegal.
Yeah, that's one of the things I keep ending up saying in a lot of these gun prohibitionist arguments. If someone is going to murder another person, which is already as illegal as it can possibly be, a regulation isn't going to stop them.
Nope. And of course, California will continue to try to claim that they're one of the safest countries in the nation, while absolutely not being one. And thanks to these lovely gun control laws.
You know, I know it was a mistake, and you meant to say state, but you said country. But yes. Honestly, culturally, California is practically its own nation.
Oh, yeah.
It's so different from the rest of the country.
I mean, yeah, that's true. Just similar to, actually, I was actually listening to the Unsubscribed podcast this weekend, and they had the MMA fighter, of whom I'm a huge fan of, Don Fry, on, and he said, this is the greatest country in the world. And Brandon Herrera said, you mean Texas? All right, shifting gears. And this is one of these places to always look at, because it seems like Michael Bloomberg's always very, very active in Virginia. It's super close to Washington, D.C., and they have these off-year elections. So in November, they're going to be having their big elections. So they're going to elect a new governor, and a whole bunch of the state legislators will be elected on this. And one of these people is Jay Jones, who is I think he's the current AG, and is he running for re-election? I should have looked that part up.
I do not know. Okay, it says here he's a candidate for Virginia's Office of Attorney General. Okay. So if he's a candidate, he's running.
Yes. And so maybe he isn't, I don't know his previous thing. I honestly, I had not heard of him before these events gone through. And again, it's local politics. But I think the important part, especially for on Second Amendment grounds, is that he is falling under a lot of scrutiny, because they'd come forward. It was years ago when this was done, but he had texted to a lawmaker,
Virginia House delegate.
Yes, that he wanted to kill one of his political opponents, and it would be worthwhile if this person's family was killed as well. And this, of course, is distasteful and horrible, and it's really mucking up the waters, because so many people are having to decide: do I be loyal to party, or do I be loyal to my morality? And that should never be a choice, but some of these swamp creatures, that is a choice. But the key factor that makes this a second, besides the fact that this person is a proponent for gun control and yet is threatening gun violence on a political opponent for political reasons.
I'm not sure about threatening, but definitely fantasizing about it.
Yes, that is probably a more accurate statement. But he is also anti-gun, and so therefore every town has given him $200,000, of which is for an AG seat is a lot of money. But it kind of shows where Michael Bloomberg's head is in this game, especially when you realize like things like George Zimmerman and Kyle Rittenhouse, who really, I think anybody who's studied those cases hard should have known that they should have never been charged in the first place, but they were charged and went through a whole lot of problems, and there was a lot of risks, and certainly we have talked about the fact that if they can manage to make it so that you defending your life even lawfully against a violent attacker might end up putting you in prison, might be a chilling effect on people lawfully exercising their right to keep and bear arms, and that's exactly what they want. But either way, Bloomberg donated $200,000 to him and endorsed him. And when these texts came through, they scrubbed the web page.
Actually, they donated the money to him after these texts were done. And giving Bloomberg the benefit of the doubt, I don't want to, but I have to be fair. There's the possibility that they did not know about these threatening texts when they gave the money. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, who knows. But they definitely gave him the money after these texts were made. And when it came to light that he had made those texts, which was about a week ago, October 7th, and there's a tweet here talking about it, and then underneath it, the Free Beacon reported that Everytown had quietly scrubbed its website of an endorsement of J. Jones.
Mm-hmm.
So at the very least, they understand bad optics, and giving the benefit of the doubt, they might realize this is not a guy we want to be associated with, and we made a mistake, and we're just going to correct that now.
Yeah, obviously, these texts were years ago, but virtually nobody knew about them until it was made into a press story, like you said last week. So, but the big factor is that they donated a ton of money to him. We know what type of person he is, and no matter what they knew at the time of what they donated, even if they didn't know that he had said these specific stuff, maybe they didn't talk to him at all. But $200,000 is a lot of money to just give willy-nilly. I'd be kind of surprised if they didn't know what kind of a person Jay Jones is. But also the fact that they are distancing themselves from him, but they're not going back on their endorsement.
They aren't?
There's been no public statement as far as I've known. I mean, maybe...
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I did mention that they had removed from the website their endorsement. But yes, to the best of my knowledge, they haven't come out and actively denounced him.
Yeah, they're just doing a straight up gaslight. They've never endorsed him as far as they know. They have not rescinded anything. They have not made any public statements about him. They've just went through and just nuked it entirely. And this last one, well, this is just something for us to keep an eye on. Canada, of course, is enacting the standard issue voluntary gun buyback before the guns become completely illegal, and they take the guns away and you go to prison when they find them. And there has been some information that has surfaced. Actually, a friend of the show, Ian Runkle of Runkle of the Bailey on YouTube, has uncovered a bunch of this stuff, that there were some warehouses where once the guns are going to be bought back by the government, and just like New Zealand, they're going to be destroying them, not auctioning, not selling them like here in the United States or anything like that to defer into the cost. One of the warehouses that they were going to be sent to was owned by the Colt CZ conglomerate. But I've got a link here to Collier Noir's website, and he has a statement that says, please note that Colt Canada is not and will not be involved in the Canadian government firearms buyback program from Canadian citizens. Our activities in Canada remain focused on serving military and law enforcement customers.
I just want to clarify, that wasn't Collier Noir saying that. That was the spokesperson and head of external relations, Eva Svobodova. I thought I could get it right. Svobodova. I want to point out that CZ is, I'm pretty sure, a Czech company, so that's a Slavic name.
Yes. Don't ask me to pronounce what town in the Czech Republic it is, because I cannot.
Okay.
But yeah, this is something interesting to watch. I mean, Ian Runkles pointed out that Canada has different laws as far as like freedom of information and all that goes, that this could all be also gaslighting. And in fact, they're going to be used. I mean, we reported on this on a couple of years ago when I believe it was Washington State had a gun buyback, and the Washington State police were actually using Benchmade knives, their facility to destroy the firearms, because it's to demill a firearm. That's a challenging task. You need a lot of people they can't do it with just the stuff they've got in their garage. And so they needed to outsource the destruction, and they were doing it with Benchmade knives, and they thought it would be a good public interest story to show that they're working with the police and they're being helpful to the police, showing them chopping up, really fancy rifles and shotguns that were being given up by ungrateful children of the gun owners most often. So that did not work well for Benchmade. So we will keep our eye out on Colt Canada and the Canadian gun confiscation, and hoping and praying that the Canadians figure out a way to beat back this nonsense, because they're going to be taking them to the cleaners with this buyback, because essentially they are giving them essentially low ball rates for all of their firearms, and it's low ball rates for the base gun. So if you've got a gun that's beat up and needs a lot of work and maybe might not fully functional, you might end up being ahead in the game with this buyback. But if you've got any sort of fancier upgrades or something like that done to your gun, you are losing a pile of money, as well as your guns.
Plus, the government doesn't have the ability to buy back your guns, because that would indicate they sold them to you in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just me raging at semantics at this point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's just, it's the worm in common parlance, but yeah, it's wrong and it's dumb. And it's and to buy back, as a general rule, like if an automaker buys back a firearm, they give you what you paid for the car. And so you just get you no longer have the car, but you have all the money you had before you had the car, and you are made whole. And the government, was never involved in the selling of the gun in the first place, so they don't know what it cost. And then on top of that, they're not caring about making you whole. They are going to pay you what they think they owe you.
Honestly, I'm surprised, because you would imagine that the government would think, I don't owe you anything, peon.
Yeah, and I mean the reason why they want to take the guns away is because they don't want the people that may want to say no to the government to have any teeth, and just simply door-to-door confiscation, turn them all in. We're just taking them from you. That might turn out to be risky.
Okay, are we done with this?
Yes, though I realized I forgot something. I was going to do it at the top of the show, and I I got sidetracked, but so we will do it before we go into our first segment. Is I got a review from a friend of the show. She is going by Manic Mayhem, and is mentioning that that she listened to her first episode of the podcast, which was 362, and said it is the best podcast to listen to while drugged out of your mind post wisdom teeth removal. 1010 would recommend. Cannot confirm the podcast experience while not on prescription opioids. And so I asked her to write back to me after the pain has subsided and she is eating solid foods again, and it is enjoying the podcast clean and sober.
I mean, sobriety not required.
I mean, it's not at all, unless you're driving. I listen to a lot of podcasts while I'm driving.
Well, yes, but that's a function of driving, not a function of the podcast.
That's true. That is absolutely true. All right, let's move on to segments.
So I had a wonderful transition and you ruined it, but that's okay.
Weird makes everything awful.
Okay, sure. I'll take that. So, I mean, I was going to pivot because if you cast your mind back a few minutes, Weer'd was talking about this Canada thing and how the law was wrong and stupid. And then I was going to say, well, speaking of wrong and stupid, we have another Weer'd audio fisc dealing with the post-Minneapolis gun control demands.
The shooting at the Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis seems like a lifetime ago. After the shooting, I grabbed a few interviews that were worthy of a fisc. And frankly, gun prohibitionists never actually care about the event they're reacting to. They only care that people are more interested in listening to gun control after a shooting. The interview is on MSNBC. It's Mike Spies, who is the senior staff writer for Michael Bloomberg's The Trace.
Despite the numbers that you've pointed out, and you pointed out them a little bit earlier, the majority of Americans don't own guns, and the majority of Americans want stricter gun laws.
Right.
Nobody actually knows the exact number of guns in America, nor how many households own guns. The numbers are generally roughly half of American households own at least one. But I wonder how accurate that is. I grew up in an anti-gun household, but Dad had 2 guns at home, both rusted from neglect, unable to fire in the condition they were in. Both were restored, thankfully. But would Dad have ever considered those rusty relics of his youth gun ownership as he lived in the suburbs of Portland, Maine? How many addicts have Grandpa's old shotgun or an old .22? Of course, my mother-in-law also kept confusing a Daisy BB gun in her attic with a rifle. So, the numbers are muddy at best. Further, while poll after poll agrees that Americans want more gun control, when the polls are actual ballot questions, or for politicians who demand stronger laws, public opinion is often less agreeable to gun control.
Right. I mean, I guess it's a matter of what gets prioritized at the polls, which is to say, I mean, I suppose people think that other things are more important. That's what they vote on first.
Clearly, gun control is not a top priority issue, because while people talk about issues like abortion, healthcare, climate change, and taxes constantly, the gun control people are like ghouls who only come out when they smell fresh blood. That being said, this clearly isn't true. Back in 2016, Michael Bloomberg organized a massive push in states with a referendum process and got questions on the ballots in several states. So there was no priority. Either people voted on the measure or they didn't. In Nevada, the ballot passed by only a few hundred votes. But it was written by Everytown, not Nevada residents, so it was ruled unconstitutional on a legal technicality. In Maine, Bloomberg was able to literally buy all the ad space, so Mainers only heard positive ads for background checks. And the measure still failed. California passed a magazine ban by referendum, but even in the deep blue anti-gun state, and all those positive poll numbers, it only won by 13% of the vote. And also, despite the narrow victory in Nevada, Bloomberg abandoned the referendum method and instead got the legislature to pass a background check bill. People overall like the idea of gun control, but when they realize how it will be implemented, they balk.
But I do think that there's honestly, a lack of knowledge among lawmakers. I mean, I think like the same playbook has been in force since background checks were first introduced in the 90s and the assault weapons ban. And we kind of always go back to those things instead of thinking of new ideas, and also being honest that, like, for example, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which we were talking about earlier, if I'm going to be totally frank and honest, was a pretty worthless bill.
This is intentional. Remember the interview with Representative Carolyn McCarthy where she was asked to define barrel shroud, and she did it as the shoulder thing that goes up? And this was from the text of a bill she presented to the House. Most gun prohibitionists don't know the difference between a shoulder stock and a pistol grip, or what semi-auto actually means. Further, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act passed because it was largely a power grant to regulating bodies, and didn't actually contain many specifics in the law. This allowed President Trump to ask the FBI and the ATF to simply stop enforcing the laws like Biden directed. Also, it meant that Congress wasn't actually voting on anything specific. That's how popular gun control is.
Nobody wants
we had Chris Brady on.
Right.
Murphy. I'm sorry. Chris Brown on from Brady, who was arguing that that was actually a very big deal.
No, it was a feel-good bill.
You've got to laugh that host Katie Tur quickly forgot Chris Brown of Brady United's name. And Mike Spies thought she was talking about Connecticut Center and Audio Fist perennial Chris Murphy. Meanwhile, most people with any interest in U.S. politics can tell you who Wayne LaPierre is. And many still think he's running the NRA.
It is valuable on the margins, and I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about red flag laws, which allow, a person to petition a court to have guns taken from their loved one temporarily. But that's like such an abdication of responsibility. That, again, puts the issue back on regular people to police their loved ones, which isn't really appropriate.
No, they want the government to make sure loved ones never have guns in the first place. Also note that red flag laws are just gun control in a white coat. The laws take the gunaways from allegedly dangerous people, and it does nothing to help them. Even if the laws aren't abused, and they are, they lock up the guns, and they leave the suicidal or homicidal people free to do what they want.
I think it's either like you have to be honest and say what will actually work, which is what nobody wants to hear, which is that there are just simply way too many firearms and they're way too accessible. And even if
they're too powerful?
And they're too powerful. Even handguns, too. Again.
There it is. Gun control is always about taking the guns, not just assault weapons or high-capacity guns. Everything. Also note that most nations in the world already do this. And most nations have a much higher crime rate than the United States.
And that's why in Australia, it doesn't matter if it's not politically acceptable to say it. I'm not here as a politician or anyone who works in politics. I'm a journalist. Whether or not you like it, the only thing that really works, if you really wanted to bring down gun violence, was to do what Australia did and to do what many other countries in Europe do.
They will always praise massive sweeping gun bans in places like the UK and Australia because this is what they all want. And dirty little secret, those gun bans didn't work.
I realize I will get so much hate mail over this. People will tell me that I'm a communist and all of these other things, and I'm so terrible, which also only reinforces the point as I will definitely get, some sort of
blowback.
Not just blowback, but threatening blowback, which is to say these people who are supposed to be so law-abiding are so quick to tell me that I ought to die or whatever else it is.
Or you better watch out.
Right.
Cry me a river. I get death threats too. A, it isn't a big deal. These are mostly mentally ill tough talkers on the internet. And B, the real dangerous people don't tell you about. Well, maybe the Parkland killer did. Wait, is that the point he's trying to make? Okay, now I'll shift gears to Michigan Representative Illhan Omar on CNN.
I do hope that this moment is not about Democrats or Republicans, that this is not about our political ideology, but it is about figuring out how do we safeguard the lives of our children.
I agree. There is nothing partisan about the Second Amendment. We all have the right to live, if you're left-wing, right-wing, or anywhere in between. But of course, that's not what she means. She wants gun bans that have been proven not to work.
I know that my youngest one, who's still in public school, worries about an assailant coming into her school and taking her life or the life of her friends and classmates.
I've said this a million times before. If your child is scared of school shootings, you are a bad parent. It's the equivalent of your kid being afraid of flying. Do planes crash? Yes. Is that horrible? Absolutely. Is it common? No. It's so rare that most people will never be touched by a plane crash or a school shooting.
I know that the parents that have experienced this horrific attack are never going to forget that moment. Some of the children that have been impacted have younger siblings and older siblings who will carry this moment with them.
This is all true. If anything, gun control made this tragedy possible.
This is about us as Americans coming together, saying this is not the kind of trauma that we want to continue to experience.
And the people who do these shootings are all cowards. If they were concerned someone might give them the Eli Dick and Dirt nap, they would be forced to come up with some other antisocial activity. Or maybe just start out with shooting themselves rather than doing that part last. Gun control is not popular. Hence why they only talk about it when there's blood on the ground. These people are simply ghouls who thrive on carnage. Don't let them win. Those are your anti-gun talking points and some rebuttals to combat them.
So I was actually surprised when you pronounced that guy's name because I saw the transcript and it looked like his name was Spies.
That is how it is spelled, and I have listened to many an interview by him, given that his position with the trace, and yeah, so I knew that it was pronounced Spies, but I also knew that you were going to say that.
Oh, okay. Well, you can fill that in on my bingo card. Oh, wait, you don't have one.
I don't have one because I'm not as talented as Aaron Paulette at making bingo cards. But yeah, this does tie in well with the Canadian discussion as well, just because, again, didn't take very long to get to them to praising Australia and England with their massive gun confiscations and all of that. And again, they didn't work, and now Canada is doing the same thing. Huge sweeping gun confiscations, massive swaths of firearms that were otherwise perfectly legal, including guns meant for sport shooting only, are just off the table. And this is what they want if we don't fight back. So recently, Xander had a very eventful day on the farm, and now he wants to have, well, a little fireside chat with all of us.
Welcome to Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. Less than a week ago, as I record this, I was involved in a delightful little emergency on the farm when harvesting soybeans. The combine harvester I was operating caught fire. After I settled down a couple days later, I decided to put this segment together as something of an after-action report to help anyone else who might be caught in a similar circumstance. I first noticed a few whiffs of smoke, possibly from a neighbor burning something. Less than a minute later, I saw bluish smoke coming from somewhere underneath me and billowing out in front of the cab. Thinking it was a slipping belt that was smoking, I stopped the forward motion of the machine to take a peek while the thresher was still going. On seeing flames well under the cab toward the front and middle of the combine, I hurried back up the steps, grabbed the fire extinguisher just inside the door, and hit the fire with a brief burst, not being able to quite see the base or source of the flames. This was partly a test to see how far back I could push it. Since it had little visible effect, I then dialed 911, then hurried around to the other side of the machine. I turned off the thresher by this point as well, since I was able to use a drive shaft for the grain harvesting head as a step. I should also note that I constantly wear Aftershok's bone conduction headphones, so I was hands-free. The engine was still running when I opened the hood next to the cab and fired another burst of the extinguisher at what I could see through what was left of the firewall. The dispatcher was not able to make out what I was saying over the sound of the engine, so I climbed back down and stepped away to circle the machine again. I was clarifying the situation. I called it in as an engine fire on a combine harvester in the field, and gave the approximate location in relation to the nearest intersection. I approached the machine again and climbed up the steps to the cab one last time to flip the seat up and remove the steel plate from under it. This finally let me get to the source of the flames, and I emptied the rest of the extinguisher and my 1-liter water bottle into the base of the fire. As I did so and finally shut the machine off, the dispatcher was correctly requesting that I move away from the machine for safety. At that point, I had inhaled some smoke and extinguisher powder, which is not good for someone with asthma. I confirmed I was following instructions as I moved toward the road, maybe a quarter mile away at a brisk walk, my bad knee preventing me from doing so at a run. I also re-clarified my location by recalling to mention the owner of the farm we were renting the field from, whose house the field was next to. Since it's a local volunteer fire department, the folks would know exactly where I was when they heard the name of the place. Once by the road, I moved to the nearest driveway and confirmed, after moving a powered hay rake by hand, that the path to the field was clear for emergency responders. I then stood by the driveway to help signal and redirect the folks where they needed to go. All this time, I remained on the line with the emergency dispatcher in case I either forgot something important or I was in worse shape than I realized. I had hit my inhaler a couple times in the interim. While I declined an offer for an ambulance, I stated that I would be willing to be checked out by the responders as needed. Once the fire engine arrived and I provided directions, the dispatcher politely ended the call. I declined a ride back to the combine from a concerned passerby, as the only thing I could do was get in the way at this point, and I figured the timing would be about right for my arrival. By the time I got there again, the firefighters had put out the fire completely, and were ready for me to go over with them what I did, saw, and knew. After that, and some brief examination of the trouble area, it was suggested I start the combine and take it back to the farm for cleaning out the dust, oil, and grease, while the folks with the fire extinguishers and water could make sure it didn't happen again. Unfortunately, I quickly discovered the steering wasn't working because the hoses had burned through and blew out the contents of the hydraulic reservoir. At that point, I accepted a ride back to my car and called it a day. The machine is still not fully working, as 4 hoses were ruined, and one of them is being very difficult to replace. That is, lining up the end of the hose with the fitting and not damaging the threads, trying to tighten it down. I also need to go over the wiring in the affected area to both make sure that the fire didn't damage it, as well as ensure that none of it was the cause of the fire. We were so lucky. The machine could have been a blackened pile of smoking steel, or it could have needed a service call to get it so we could drive it to the nearest dealership. I am fine, aside from the strain of the activity having weakened my bad knee, and I'm taking it relatively easy this week. I did a bunch of things right, some things good enough, and there's some things I should have done differently. Last first, I should have completely shut the machine down. The engine fan was feeding oxygen into the fire, and potentially fuel in the form of diesel or hydraulic fluid as well. Pressure prevented some of the fuel issue. The rest of the extra fuel for the fire was coming from the power steering system. Since I was also very quickly moving around the equipment by myself, having the engine running was an additional safety hazard. Furthermore, the engine noise made it hard for the emergency operator to make out what I was trying to say. The cause of the fire was also due to lack of sufficient maintenance in the form of removing all the oil, grease, and grain dust from the nooks and crannies under the cab. A few minutes dealing with the awkward seat and plate would have saved a lot of time, money, and stress. It wasn't until after that I saw the dispatcher had attempted to get the GPS location of my phone, but I had not noticed request notification in the moment. I shall have to dig into the settings to see if I can auto-approve this in case I am physically unable to use the touchscreen and cannot provide adequate directions. In the good enough column, I had a working charged fire extinguisher, but it was not big enough to fully extinguish the fire. I think it was like a 2.5 pound unit, not the smallest, but I will be getting bigger. Cheap insurance. The replacement cost of this machine for brand new is the cost of a house. A nice house. It also took me a bit to get to the source of the fire, resulting in lost precious time and resources. I also had some water, but most of a gallon jug, which I got out of the habit of taking in the cooler weather, would have helped even more. The cab of the machine wasn't too bad with clutter. A couple rolls of paper towels and a couple spare parts went flying out the door when I went after the access cover, but there was more fuel for the fire in there, in the form of 2 gallons of hydraulic fluid, several cans of spray chain lubricant, and some tool and trash clutter. I shall have to be more strict on myself about tidiness and determine whether and where I can store the flammables elsewhere on the machine, and while they remain accessible for needing to perform maintenance and top things off. In the did it right category, I was as coherent and complete as I could be. I was able to provide location information in 2 different ways and listen to the emergency operator. I described what I was doing as I was doing it for the most part. This provided an official record of the timeline of my actions once the call went through. I did not wait to get backup, knowing that it takes time for volunteer firefighters to get from their current location to the station and from there to the fire. I did not wait until all hope was lost before asking for help. I minimized risks by not attempting unfamiliar things during a period of high stress. For example, I had previously thought about and planned what to do in general should a fire break out while I'm out in the field by myself. In the end, emergency response in the moment is about doing enough things good enough that the professionals can take it from there when they get there. You don't get a do-over. However, you do get an opportunity to have an emergency responder tell you that your actions made it so that they could do their part in time.
And please do not operate heavy machine while listening to ACP blooper reel. We've had 0 fatalities so far, but there have been a few people who've been close. You know who you are. Be safe out there.
Have fun. Be safe. I hope I gave you something to think about.
He had a hot time in the combine last week.
He did. He did. Glad everybody's okay. And yeah, the combine is going to be, I don't know if it's fully back in service yet, but he says it's totally fixable. So that's awesome, as well. And, I ended up, I was talking with Xander about this earlier. So I ended up linking the video. I found it of Clint Smith talking about fire safety, and he notes that he likes to when he has his grandkids up at the house, he goes out in the backyard and makes a fire. They do s'mores, and then when they're done eating their s'mores, he hands them a fire extinguisher, tells them how to use it, and then has them put the fire out. And he says, $20, and I've taught them how they can save my life and theirs.
That's a really good idea. And he's also making the education fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
He also made a point that I felt that I was doing pretty good. I mean, there's a fire extinguisher right beside me down here in the in my armory, mostly because this is also the mechanical space of the house. So the water heater and the furnace and all the stuff is down here. So there's that fire damage, and we've got one upstairs in the kitchen. And then one up on the 3rd floor, just because it's such an isolated part of the house that it's good to. I felt it was a good idea to have a fire extinguisher up there, but yeah, we don't have one in our bedroom, as Clint Smith suggests, which that's a pretty good idea as well. So I might be thinking about adding to the arsenal. And one last point of order. I think Xander wanted me to cut it out, but he coughs a couple of times after he talks about smoke inhalation, and I decided to leave that in for artistic purposes.
So Weer'd. Do you know who else enjoys your artistic purposes?
I mean, I hope so. I mean, that would be why there are listeners. And yes, we need to thank them, each and every one of them. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast and listening. We're glad to have you. But we must give a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. So you can go on Patreon, patron, go to patreon.com/AssortedCalibers podcast to sign up. And patrons get an early release of the podcast, plus bonus content like the ACB blooper reels, which the bingo cards will work extremely well on, the ACB film track, and the ACB mag dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
You can get more at me and my blog, which is weirdworld.com. That's WEERDworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
Well, my preferred carry caliber is 9mm, whereas Weer'd's is
45 ACP.
That's a bingo. Our carry calibers are assorted, and so is our podcast. Good night, everyone.
Good night.